Today's vlog or essay is a recollection of something that happened to me earlier this year, and I include some thoughts as well. Some time ago, I strolled down Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork. As I neared the GPO, I noticed some people handing out leaflets and talking to passers-by. An older gentleman wore a high visibility vest which was emblazoned on the back with the slogan, "Solidarity for Palestine," or words to that effect. On my right hand side as I walked by was a small table adorned with leaflets of various kinds, and it was manned by a young man who appeared to be in his late teens, maybe about college age. He stood behind the table looking about to see if he could attract anyone's attention. I decided to say hello and inquire what they were up to. I nodded a hello to the 18-year-old and picked up a leaflet from the table, scanning my eyes quickly over it while the young man looked on. Rather than tell him directly what was on my mind or make any statements, I instead looked up at him and posed some questions. The young man, who I'm guessing was probably a well-intentioned or impressionable student, proceeded to regurgitate his prepared answer regarding a boycott of Israeli goods. As I listened, the word genocide grabbed my ear in the middle of his sentence. I asked him to define what he meant by the term genocide. He then replied with what sounded like the usual anti-Israeli talking points. He was well rehearsed, it seems, and he parroted all his claimed factoids right on cue. I'm not sure whether the word occupation or claim of a stolen land was there in his answer, but it was certainly there in spirit, reading between the lines. I decided to ask another question. Who was in full control of Gaza and the West Bank territories in 1967 before the Six-Day War? I inquired. I think the question took him by surprise, right out of left field. It was unexpected. The young man paused to think for a moment. There was a look of bafflement on his face as he grappled for an answer, unsure of how he should respond. It was clear almost immediately that he didn't know. I didn't expect him to be fair. The question had caught him off guard as it would require a factual response, rather than a prepared trope. I waited for an answer as my companion looked on. 30 seconds passed, then maybe another 15. I purposely remained silent. It was an uncomfortable moment for the lad, as I could see that he really wanted to answer my question, to display his authority on the matter. That, in fact, was the point of my question, to expose to the young man himself that he had in fact little authority, as his knowledge was lacking and shallow. Sometimes, in such situations, it's more strategic to ask people such pointed questions so as to hold a mirror up to their beliefs, rather than make combative statements, which can antagonize and lead to feelings of anger and animosity. It forces them to think about their beliefs and usually bypasses their parroted replies that they may have learned by rote. After a long uncomfortable pause, I then interjected so as to release him from any embarrassment, which was not my intention anyway. "It's okay if you don't know," I said to him. "Not everyone does," I added. He looked a little relieved as he waited for me to tell him. Egypt and Jordan fully controlled those areas, I informed him. I explained to him that the Arabs had lost those territories to Israel following the war the Arabs themselves had started in 1967. "I don't believe that," he replied. "That's not true," he protested. "This is not about belief," I responded. "This is a historical statement of fact." He waved his hand from left to right and in effect blanked me. My statement of fact did not compute for him, was not in alignment with his program. It was a bug in his line of code, and an update would need to be downloaded to erase it from his mind, to bring his thinking back into harmony with his truth. This is a key question for such individuals because, by virtue of the fact that the Arabs controlled those areas up to that time, which were not sovereign Egyptian or Jordanian lands, by the way. Why then did they not hand them over and set up a so-called Palestinian state, if this issue is indeed about land, as they seem to claim? The truth is that it exposes that land is not the issue at all. The issue is that they want all the land, in the sense that they don't want Jewish people to have any of it, from the river to the sea. Returning to the young man, I felt sorry for him, to be honest. His intentions were probably good, but he had clearly been infected with all the common left-wing socialist talking points. Truth has now become negotiable in our society, with many declaring, "my truth is that," or "my truth is the other." Factual information does not seem to matter anymore. If something factual stands against someone's belief in some cause, then, of course, that fact cannot possibly be true or correct in the mind of that believer. I emphasize the word believer because a certain amount of faith is required to maintain a factually incorrect position. It is a frightening state of affairs when individuals are incapable of employing logic by way of objective truth. Being confronted in this way is psychologically quite uncomfortable for such a person. Such beliefs are akin to a child who finds solace at night holding tightly to a teddy bear while they sleep. If that toy bear is taken away or damaged in some form, then they can get very upset indeed. Christ said that, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." This statement can be looked at on two levels. Firstly, he was referring to himself, as he also stated that, "I am the way and the truth and the life." In other words, knowing him is equivalent to knowing the truth, because he himself is the truth. The second level is somewhat broader. When you fully accept something as being true, when you know a certain truth in your being and have taken it on board, then you have been released from a previous deception that you were under. It can no longer hold you captive in the same way that a chattel slave is held captive by a slave master. Being in bondage to a false belief can destroy one's life and lead to a path of continual poor decision-making. Decisions are made based on a lie, leading to further enslavement and new lies, in the same way that a snowball gathers size and momentum as it rolls down a hill. A false belief can never lead to truth or reveal it. Facing truth in any area of life can be overwhelming and fearful. Sometimes it feels easier to leave one's head buried in the sand and pretend that some realities do not exist. This is always a false economy, as immovable truth will always come knocking at the door eventually. When one has allowed deception, fantasy and fabrication to fester and spread over a period of time, that door knock of reality is a certainty. Those on the street, they hand out leaflets and cry, "Genocide, genocide," in their victim voice and phony outrage. But they turn their back on what has gone before, and on October 7th. Now reality is knocking firmly on the front door, but they cannot bring themselves to get up from their left-wing sofas to answer it. Hankies in hand, they prefer to cry a river and take on the role of victim on behalf of those who started the conflict, those they defend with their leaflets. Causes such as climate change and Palestine are all spokes of the one wheel. At the hub of this wheel is a rudderless ship, a godless soul who is searching for meaning and some cause to support, to fill that vacuum that only God can pour into. As in the example of Greta Thunberg, those who campaign for one of these two causes are almost always out supporting the other. Such causes can never set one free, because God has designed us with a lock that only He can open. That is what Christ meant when He said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." In other words, He will set you free when you know Him. All these other man-made causes only lead to serfdom and slavery. As me and my colleague left the cafe and once more passed the Palestine canvassers, A lady in her mid-40s put her hand out, gesturing us to take a leaflet. I already had a conversation with one of your colleagues, I told her, and she acknowledged that with a thank you. I continued, but I didn't concur with much of what he had to say. Her facial demeanour suddenly changed to one of disdain and passive anger toward me. My friend turned to me and said, "These types of people cannot tolerate anyone who disagrees with them." "Yes, you're right," I replied, and we walked on.